Hello neighbors, it's Brad here at eTrailer, and today we're taking a look at installing Curt 4-pole trailer wiring that's vehicle specific for our 2022 Jeep Grand Cherokee WK. Having 4-pole wiring is essential if you plan on pulling a trailer, as it's going to give you your light functions. And that way, when you have your running lights on, your turn signals or brake lights, it's going to shoot that signal back to the lights on your trailer, keeping you safe and legal and letting everyone behind you know what you're intending to do. Now, as far as mounting up your 4-pole, you can actually just use the dust cap that's included and clip this around the safety chain loop, and it's going to keep it nice and protected and clean until you're ready to use it. Other options, we have plenty of brackets available here that's going to allow you to properly mount that up, and that way it's nice and secure, but this also works just fine. Now, this is module protected, which means that any backfeed that might occur from a trailer shortage of wiring there is going to not harm any of the wiring on our vehicle, as this plugs in directly to our taillights using a factory style connection. So really there's not a whole lot of cutting and splicing except for to add butt connectors to our fuse holder and our power wire. So really it's pretty well plug and play. You do have to run that power wire up to the battery to get to the 12-volt power, which can be a little bit tricky, but other than that, it's pretty easy to just plug these into the back of the taillight, run your wires, and then you're ready to go. So let's take a look at the installation. That way you can get your trailer wiring installed. To begin our installation, we're going to open up our rear hatch, and we're going to want to gain access to the plugs on our taillight, as our harness will be plugging into those. So you'll see there's two plastic push pins here on the taillight. So now here on the plastic push pin, there's a small little slot that's going to allow you to either get a flathead or a trim panel tool, as I have here. You can pry that center button up, and then you should be able to get behind it and pull the whole thing out. Now, if it does separate from the bottom, not to worry, you can pop them back in place. So we'll get both of these out, and then I'm going to go ahead and also repeat on the other side and get those taillights plastic push pins taken out as well. Now, to get your taillight out, a lot of times there's going to be just prongs that kind of go into rubber grommets. So you kind of just wobble that back and forth. You can see here kind of where they pop into place. So if you need to put pressure there, that's kind of where you're going to push, and also kind of just push out. Now, our harness is going to match up to the OEM plug. So let's go grab our harness and I'll show you which one matches up with this. So our yellow one is going to be our left turn signal, and our brown is our running light. So you're going to see that we're going to be unplugging two. So we have our top one and our middle one. So we can go ahead and we'll go ahead and get our whole taillight taken out. That way we can set it aside to make some space. So you're going to pull that locking tab out, push on the plug and on this tab here, and it should get out there. We also have this one here, similar. Just get that locking tab pulled back, push down, pull out, and we'll get this one off as well. Now here on the passenger side, we're only needing to tie into the large top plug, so just keep that in mind. I'm still going to remove our whole taillight assembly just to kind of get it out of the way. Now, to get our plugs up to where our taillights are, I'm using spare airline tube that we have here, and this is just going to be a fish wire technique. So if you can find a string and tie a nut to it, or you can kind of drop that down. Basically anything you can to feed through and grabs below, that way we can tape this up and pull our wires up. So what I suggest doing, since it is kind of a tight spot up there, is keeping these singular. You don't want to try to double it up. It's not going to be able to fit that way. So grab the largest end of the plug, and we're going to feed that portion up first. You may need to kind of support the module and the rest of the wiring harness as you kind of feed it up. And just take your time here. You don't want to damage any of the wires or have your tape come off as you're pulling up. But as we make our way up here, we should get close to our plug. We're going to want to grab that and pull it through. And as I mentioned, it is kind of tight here, so if you need to, you can kind of pull on the fascia just a little bit with your fingers to create a little bit more of a gap. We can see our plug right there. Now, once I've pulled this through, I kind of realized that whatever you're pulling it through with, if you're using a similar diameter, putting it to the side to where it's wider or longer, it's going to make it a little bit easier to feed this through. It is, again, kind of a tight fit here. So we're going to go ahead and get the rest of our plugs pulled through here as well. We also have a ground ring terminal as well, that white wire. So we should have our 4 plugs and our ground wire pulled up. So we'll get our tape taken off here. So now you're going to grab your plugs that you just pulled through, and they should correspond with the factory ones. So just grab one and it should match up. There's really no way that you can mess it up. They all play ball together, and all of the factory plugs are different. So you really can't plug it into the wrong one. Snap that back in place. Once you have that connected, we'll go ahead and grab our other plug here and get this one snapped in as well. Now this gray one's going to go back in the taillight, and these are ones that we have from our new harness. We're going to jumper back into our taillight. So we just kind of hopped in the middle of that wiring here, but we also need to attach our ground wire. So what I'm going to do is grab the self-tapping screw that's included in the kit. I'm going to take a look here real quick where our taillights sit. That way we have clearance, but I think if we kind of put it right in this area, we should be fine. So I'm going to go ahead, grab the self-tapper, and get that mounted in. Just make sure that the flat part of the ring terminal is facing the metal, and then we'll just kind of get this in place here and then drill this in. Now you don't want to go too crazy here because you can round out the threads. You're just trying to make your own threads, so just tight enough to where that ring terminal is not going to slide around. There we go. So now go ahead and grab your tail light, and then we'll just plug in our new harness according to where they were before. So again, pretty easy. It's hard to mess up here. Make sure you're locking those tabs. So now we'll go ahead, and I'm going to try to tuck my new plugs kind of over to the side to where there's clearance, and then we can go ahead and get our taillight back in place. So now that leaves us with our power wire here, and we're going to be attaching that to the black loom of wire that came in the kit. We also have our green wire. Now this is going to run over to the passenger side, and we're just going to route that up just the same as we did on our driver's side, but we're only going to have that one plug to tie into. And then we have our 4-pole, which we're going to be routing over, and this will kind of live right next to the safety chain loop by using the dust cap that's included in the kit. So same thing, I ran my wires over, and I'll show you how I routed those once we hop back under, but we're just going to plug into our large plug up here, and now we can get our tail light here put back in. Now I've gone ahead and zip tied everything up. So once I plugged my wires in the passenger side, I pulled the slack over, and I've just zip tied that wire up, just kind of tucked up here to some of the factory wire loom, that way it doesn't come loose. And I also routed my 4-pole wiring, as you can see, just following the hitch, keep it kind of nice and clean here, and using my dust cap to attach it to the safety chain loop. So everything as far as extra wiring is bundled up. Our module, I also took the double-sided tape, put it on the back side, and then zip tied it to the mounting hole here on the chassis. That way, even if that adhesive doesn't stick, this will hold it in place. So all that's left is our black power wire here. So we're going to want to grab our large loom of power wire that comes in the kit, and we can make this attachment and start running that up to the battery. Now I've attached my power wire to our extra wire using a heat shrink butt connector, and that way it's got a nice watertight seal since it lives behind the wheel well here, and it's going to be exposed to any weather really that it sees. So using the standard butt connector, it's going to work, but I highly recommend making sure that this is watertight, and a heat shrink butt connector is a great way to do that. Now going this way, I've just kind of followed along a lot of the factory wire loom. I went up over our rear cross member here, and then I just kind of shot over towards the fuel tank. And then once I kind of made my way along here, again, just following that factory wire loom, there's a few nice spots to throw a few zip ties. And then right about here, I went up top, and our battery compartment's kind of tucked up by the windshield washer or up towards the window. And I shined a flashlight up, and that way I could see where to put my fish wire down. So I ran this all the way up, attached my wire, and that way I can pull this up towards our battery. I'm going to pull up my power wire now. And make sure all of our slack is pulled out underneath. And clearly we have quite a bit of extra, so I'm going to go ahead and I'll just cut that down because we still need to attach our fuse holder, which is going to add length to it as well. So now we're going to go ahead and I cut off the excess. We're going to just strip this portion back. And then we'll be attaching our fuse holder with our butt connector here. And anytime you make a crimp, I highly suggest just kind of give it a quick tug to make sure that the wire's actually attached. It's not going to come loose. And then our fuse holder, we can attach it to either side here. Now make sure you don't have your fuse in the fuse holder until we have everything completely hooked up. That way we're not sending power through it. And then on our other end of the fuse holder, we have our ring terminal here. So we'll just place that on and crimp that down. And now we need to put this on our positive battery terminal, and it looks like there's a small satellite location here. So we're going to go ahead and get this nut taken off by using a 13mm socket. So you can go ahead and loosen that up and get that out, and that way we can get our ring terminal put on there. So now we'll go ahead, get our ring terminal placed here on the positive terminal. Just kind of make sure that it's clear enough to where it can be tightened down to where this sits nice and flat there. We can go ahead, get this put back on and tighten that down. Now with this tightened down, we can go ahead and get our cap put back on our positive terminal here. Then we'll take our fuse and we can put this in our fuse holder. And we'll cap this up, and if you want to, you can zip tie up the extra wires. So now we're going to go ahead and test to make sure it's working, and we're going to be using a 4-pole tester. The way that you can test your light functions is hooking it up to your trailer and just running through the same ones that I'm going to make sure that they're working. Now the 4-pole tester is nice because it keeps it specific to the vehicle, and that way if you have any wiring issues with your trailer, it's not going to show up. So let's go ahead. We'll start with our running lights. Next, we'll go to our left turn signal, then our right turn signal, and then finally our brakes. So with everything working properly, the only thing left to do is hook up to our trailer and get our 4-pole all plugged in and then hit the road. And that was a look and installation of the Curt 4-pole trailer wiring harness on a 2022 Jeep Grand Cherokee WK.